What's going on, guys? It's Frito here for your Overwatch. A patch just went through to the Overwatch 2 beta, and I'm being told, I believe, that if you had applied to get into Phase 2 of the Overwatch 2 beta and haven't gotten in yet, the last and final wave to let everybody in for the final weekend has gone through, so everyone should have access now, and you'll be able to play over the weekend up until July 18th, where the beta is going to go down again. No word on if there's another one in between the official launch of the game, October 4th. So if you have a chance, you probably want to get in and have some fun, especially with the new changes that they're putting through. So first patch note is to Doomfist. Power Block's minimum damage mitigated requirement to empower Rocket Punch has been reduced from 100 to 90 damage. And the movement speed penalty while blocking has been reduced from 50 to 35%. So this means you'll be able to move and dodge from the counters to power block, such as, let's say, Enfeebling Orb or Anti-Nade or Sleep Dart, things that are going to disable him so he doesn't even really want to go in after empowering anyway, as well as work up to his empowered rocket gauntlet a little bit faster, ever so slightly. I'm not sure that 10 damage is going to even be noticeable, but in theory should buff him a little bit at least. And another buff they put through was to Rocket Punch, where it now deals damage to all enemies knocked back instead of only the first target impacted. So you could get multiple knock-offs the map, but the damage of the punch was only hitting that first target. Not so sure this is where Doomfist needed to be improved. The power drop and drain from the previous set of nerfs, losing the concussion effect, was so severe. I don't know what they're going to do in order to make this guy viable yet again, especially when there's other characters that straight up buff your team, similar to Junker Queen, that just is up next. She's getting nerfed a bit, so maybe that helps Doom compete. I think it's gonna be tough for the developers to find a balancing point where they can buff up Doom to compensate for losing the concussion effect that he had in the first beta. I think they're quite a ways away from making that a reality. I think even if he always had the powered version of the gauntlet, he still would not be that good in the current state. That's how bad I think it is to lose the concussion effect. I almost think you'd rather have that than have the power gauntlet all the time. Mainly because I think players have learned how to play around Doomfist. It was quite severe to begin with, and that's something that I'm not sure how Blizzard is ever going to figure out in Overwatch 2, and maybe it figures itself out over some time, but there's so many new players into the game, or players used to Overwatch 1 and all these new mechanics. I just can't think they're really getting great data on what the objective power level of a character is when a lot of us have gotten used to a mechanic and now know how to counter it. Well, I think that was like 2 steps back for Doomfist, where the community leveled up against him and they also nerfed him. Next up, nerfs to Junker Queen. Speaking of characters that we're still learning the matchup for, Commanding Shout's radius has been reduced from 20 to 15 meters. And the allied bonus health now decays over its duration. So just like Sound Barrier, you get that burst of health, it's going to start decaying. This is a pretty big nerf, these two things combined, to the team aspect of this ability's utility, where they before, let's say they all got a big burst of health and it maintained for a while, it meant the enemy team kind of had to just like run from that engagement to stand a chance, because they start to fight one thing, it leaves the fight, the next character steps up with its full extra green health, and it's just so much extra health for the team to utilize. Whereas now you got to use it at the point of contact, and the teammates that aren't really utilizing it are going to be losing it over time anyway. So you kind of have to use it or lose it, so to speak. But one aspect they did buff the Shout with is its maximum duration has been increased from 4 seconds to 5 seconds. That's interesting to me. So that means the speed boost aspect of it will last longer on yourself and teammates, but also overall, this kind of just means it's a buffed version for Junker Queen herself. So solo plays running in, you'll be able to chase things down longer because you'll have a full extra second of that move speed buff. Overall, a lot weaker in this variation, but interestingly to me, from a team aspect, this might actually make her more viable because she kind of needs to full out aggress and gain space quickly to have any chance to do anything in the meta game, because I think there's so many matchups that she's just useless at. And although the buffs from Commanding Shout feel good for like a pickup game, I think that speed is essential for high level play for her to be able to interact with anything, because if she can't get in, it kind of doesn't matter if you shout and you have more health, because they can just dodge the engagement with characters that have movement or defensive abilities weighted out, and then she's just kind of useless. So there's many ways where I think Junker Queen is just a bit of a team meta joke of a hero. Even some matchups that she was supposed to be really good in, like against Reinhardt, for example, considering he has a shield and natural armor health and a lot of melee damage himself, even worse than Orisa in beta phase 1, I think the matchup for Reinhardt to protect her anti-tank characters like Ana in the back line with a shield and melee damage himself means that, yeah, just please run in at me. That will be great for a character like that. Another nerf to Junker Queen, Rampage's radius has been reduced from 6 to 5 meters. Keep in mind, with both of these area of effect changes, that's double that amount in diameter. 1 meter of radius equates to 2 meters of overall diameter. And I think this makes sense because, at least for me, getting hit by Rampage, it always feels like the hitbox is much bigger than the actual visuals. So this kind of, I think, tightens it up closer to what you see from the character. Seems fair to me. Key takeaways for the Junker Queen nerfs: you'll have to be a lot tighter to her with only 15 meters of radius on Commanding Shout in order to utilize it, but it's a bit better on her alone anyway, so maybe it's better to off angle rather than get the advantage of the rush in and try to like pincer on her engage as she tanks and sets up for a rush. Orisa got a pair of significant buffs. Fortify now disables critical damage yet again, and Javelin Spin's bonus move speed goes back up to 50%. I think the truth is that Orisa, if she doesn't stop headshot damage, it's just way too easy to headshot her with everything in the game when she just stands up tall in front of the front line. And now this, combined with the long list of damage buffs she got, I think Orisa's legit for a pub stomper character anyway. If Junker Queen is the shieldless tank that's good at rushing in, Orisa can anchor the objective and be unmovable yet again. Though overall, the teamwork options to set up, especially as they keep making supports better overall as a role, having a tank that protects them more so than gets a limbs in their own right is going to scale up in value, which I think has happened. Because although they're nerfing Winston and Reinhardt, protecting your support can often lead to more consistent results than more effectively killing the enemies. Now changes to the damage category. Sojourn's railgun primary fire, or at least the full auto version of the weapon, has its fire rate reduced from 15 to 14 shots per second. Now, of course, this will drop her overall DPS when using the primary fire, but more importantly, remember, this is the way that she ticks up to her real railgun alternate fire snipe attack. So that means she'll be charging that up slower than before. But they have reworked the railgun in a significant way where the projectile radius of the alternate fire railgun snipe shot, it scales with energy level from 0 up to the previous 0.1 meters. So that means it's going to have no hitbox effectively to a 0.1 hitbox meter. This means the higher the energy level, the bigger the projectile radius. And I like this change, maybe not just for balance concerns, but also for the gameplay of the character, because it was the case before that there really wasn't a benefit to charge up the railgun beyond the one hit breakpoint at like 80%, I think it usually was, which I kind of felt was a little silly, especially when you can charge it up and just get a body shot oftentimes if you're in a duel in a 1v1. I think that's less interesting than needing to go for the headshots. Whereas now, if you do get that full charge 100%, punishing, let's say, like a tank who's feeding their shield to you, well, now you'll get the extra damage, obviously, but you often didn't need it, but you'll also get an easier shot. And you yourself, if you're a bad player like me, then you can utilize that to your advantage to be able to land the railgun shots a bit easier. Sojourn's balance has moved all over the place. Her fire rate at one point was 13 shots per second on the primary fire. They put it to 15, now they're trying 14 to split the difference. The railgun alt fire used to be half of the 0.1 meters. Then they made it 0.1 for all the time. Now you have to charge up in order to get that 0.1 meter alternate fire. So the ease of the Sojourn shots that you're used to now, the highlight reel levels of easy to land headshots, you can still get that, but you're going to have to work a bit more to have that easy of a shot. Something about that feels fair, but maybe she's still as overtuned as she was before, but maybe has to think a little bit more about her gameplay, which maybe is a healthy place for her to be. I think at the moment, prior to this change, it felt like she was just super forgiving and one of the best DPS picks or characters in the entire game. I think her potency will still feel the same in those impact duels, but her overall consistency slows down a bit for the rate of her gameplay, because she'll have the railgun at that supercharged level just less often, more of the time. And then in a matchup of DPS, well, oftentimes those numbers are crucial because maybe the enemy DPS can just eliminate your team too fast for you to keep up with, which is kind of what Sojourn was doing on the previous patch, where she was just nuts. Next set of changes is to Symmetra. Her photon projector alt fire charge time has been reduced from 1.2 seconds, shaving off the 0.2 entirely, and now it only takes 1 second to charge up the alternate fire. Projectile radius has increased from 0.4 to 0.5 meters, but I don't see any damage buffs here, and that's the thing that I think really holds back Symmetra the most. The alt fire is kind of useless, I think, even at these values, but being able to charge up her primary fire and play around her turrets, I've still seen her do well when there's coordination around her, so we'll have to see what we think about this. I'm not a huge fan of her turret and primary beam playstyle. I think when it wins, it just sort of wins for free because your team didn't counter it, as opposed to it being tactical or something. But the teleporter cooldown has been reduced from 16 to 12 seconds. I'll be surprised if the devs don't eventually just do another full rework to Symmetra. The change many of you have been waiting for, Zenyatta's shield health has been reduced from 175 down back to 150, so he has 200 HP max. Here's the truth, okay? Support are really strong again, and Zen, even with 200 health, I still think is pretty nuts. Casting Discord and having your own boop away ability means that Zen is a devastating support character. As long as you outplay the mass anti from Junker Queen, he just adds so much to the team with his own damage and the Discord orb. While this health revert is going to mean he can't play the same positions, I was seeing him play in the front line a lot of the times, just getting pocketed and survive all manner of breakpoints that he couldn't as a normal squishy. I think the kick is all he really needed to protect himself, hold his positioning, and get a ton of value out of Discord Orb. We like to think of a lot of these other big shutdown abilities, like now the new Enfeeble Orb or Ana's Kit, but being able to cast a disable that lingers on the target as long as you're just looking in that direction is massively strong in Overwatch 2 when there's limited defenses around. So whatever character pokes their head out, if Zen isn't getting targeted and overwhelmed, they just win whatever his line of sight fight is on, pretty much, and it's devastating. So I think having 200 health makes him a bit more fair, but he's still going to feel really strong when set up properly. Keep in mind, too, that they have buffed characters like Batiste, and they mentioned that there will be a rework to Brigitte in the launch of the game. Mercy got added movement options. So these other characters that can peel for Zen, the better they get, the better he gets, without needing extra health. Few bug fixes at the end here. Importantly, Soldier 76 was, for whatever reason, not moving at the full 50% move speed. He was down to 40. These things just happen in the beta. I still felt like he was pretty good, and I rated him pretty high in my tier list. I think now maybe he'll be actualized in that way. Guys, that's everything for today's patch breakdown video. If you did enjoy it, please be sure to leave the video with a like. It really does help us out. Lets us know that you're enjoying the content. If you haven't already, hit subscribe and click the bell icon to actually get notified when our new videos come out. I've been Frito for your Overwatch. I'll see you guys next time.